Welcome to One Spark Stories, the podcast where innovators, creators, and some unsuspecting risk takers share about navigating highs and lows, laughter and tears, and how sometimes all it takes is one spark of inspiration to find your way to happiness. This podcast will leave you inspired to take action on your own purpose as we connect, create, and celebrate unique sparks around the globe, once again proving that it is a small world after all. I am your host, Katie Currens, and we are going to take time today to meet one of my favorite humans and educators, Jessica Magee.
Jess spent a number of years as a math teacher before becoming a consultant and instructional coach. She has helped design and implement math curriculum and done countless professional development around topics, including one of my very favorites about the use of visuals in math to enhance understanding. Hey, I'm going to let you in on a little secret here, but guess who was never a fan of math? Me! Yet, getting to work alongside people like Jess, I was able to see math from a new perspective and get a better understanding as to how to approach it with curiosity versus fear. So today we are going to tackle some conversations around that big buzzword of Common Core, the reality of burnout in education, and how building community is what helps ensure positive engagement. Now, throughout the conversation, we are going to be talking a lot about Common Core in relation to math, but I just want to go into this explaining that Common Core is academic standards. It's an initiative that is covering what students are expected to learn, kindergarten through high school, for language arts and math. And then the different states have adopted those standards into their own state educational standards. So please know that Common Core is not identifying for math alone, but in the context of this conversation, we are spending a lot of time there. I hope this conversation helps bring awareness to some of our mental barriers in order to help reignite curiosity and understand that just because it's the way something has always been done doesn't mean it's the way, nor does it have to be the way it always will be. So let's not waste any more time and let's get this conversation with one of the most authentic, intelligent people I know, Jessica Magee. Thank you for joining in the fun on One Spark Stories. Yay! Are you excited?
Yay!
Well, I am excited because I know we've always talked about having a podcast, and even though that was intended to be lakes and libations, I think eventually we'll get there. So what better way to hook the listeners than talk about Common Core math?
Yeah, everyone's favorite subject.
Right? Okay. Maybe we'll back it up. We're not going to jump right into that. But I really, really do appreciate, one, just getting to spend time with you, but also that you're willing to come on and talk about something that for a variety of reasons has become controversial. So thank you for being willing to jump in here.
Oh, happy to be here.
Yay!
That sounded so fake, but I really meant it. I really did mean it. It just doesn't come off genuine.
Well, I do think it's fair to say we've all had those moments where what in the world did I just sign up for? I am going to start things off by asking you a few questions just to spark thoughts, get to know you a little bit more, and really see who this person is behind math. As a person that has always
you don't have to say it with that face.
Felt like that math anxiety, which we'll get into. There's such a stereotype, and you probably have dealt with this, that there is a mindset around, math people or the math teachers. And unfortunately, there has become a stigma. So I want to start off by just highlighting what a fantastic person you are. So, Jess, what was your favorite childhood toy?
Oh my goodness, my favorite childhood toy. When I was really little, it was strawberry shortcake, but I had I was tongue-tied when I was little. So my mom has me record it talking about strawberry shortcake and no one knows what I'm saying. So, but that was my favorite. She went with me everywhere.
I love it. Do you still have her or any strawberry
No,
shortcake?
I do not keep stuff. I am not a hoarder.
That's why I need you in my life. You help me just detach.
Well, I will take that back. At home, I'll get rid of stuff. Like, you haven't used it in a year, it's out.
Yeah.
I think that's because my first house was really small. I think it wasn't even like 1,000 square feet. So you had to be that way. But as a teacher, yeah, still probably a hoarder because you never knew when you were going to get resources again.
That is the truth. And I don't think people understand the amount of ridiculous hoarding educators have to do, quite frankly. So I am so glad to hear you say that. What do you think would be one of the most ridiculous, or something that you're like, I can't believe that I either held on to it or collected this item as a teacher? What's one of those hoarding things that people may not even realize you need to hoard?
I don't know that it's what it was, but how many. And I love math, but my students did not want to take home a compass and a protractor. That was like the last thing they wanted to do at the end of the year. So I just kept using them, but they kept ordering them every year. And I'm like, well, we can't get rid of them, when I probably should have gotten rid of the used ones. Or maybe even communicated that we need to stop ordering so many.
That happens when you get that little list. But I think, having been in that position where you have a supply list and there are very limited funds, and it was typically like, where do I prioritize materials? And you never knew year to year how much you would get. And so it did become a situation like, oh gosh, what if the protractors break? Or what if they take them somewhere? There really does become a legitimate concern over abundance of supplies, because they are very limited and the money is not there. Teachers really are providing.
And I must say, at the time, we were in financial struggles, the district I was in, and that was the only thing we got. So it was kind of, if this is going to be all that we get, I saved it with my life. I mean, I wish you could like trade things for an overabundance of compasses, but never really got into that barter system. That would have been nice.
Right. Well, I think that the other piece to point out is that just reach out to teachers that and say, hey, I have this random bin I'm getting rid of, or shelves, or toilet paper and paper towel rolls. You don't realize what gold those are and what incredible activities can be done with little paper towel and toilet paper rolls. I swear, teachers, I've always said improv was the day in the life of a teacher is improv. You're constantly on your toes, but the creative ways that you could find experiments and activities and engagement for kids, even through a paper towel roll. So people need to donate.
I'm currently collecting 2-liter bottles.
So
because we are talking about volume. So yes, you're always collecting something. One man's trash is a teacher's treasure.
Yes. Yeah, it's really true. And I think as I started to bounce around with riffs and just a lot of changes with, again, after the fallout of the financial crisis in late 2008, 2009, I had to move my class a lot. So I learned how to keep it in bins. But even then, I was leaving education with probably at least 10 bins full of books and materials and supplies that you just do. And yes, there are many jobs you have finances and expenses, but it's a real legit thing that people are looking for materials. So, well, if I could find a way to get strawberry shortcake back into your hands and find a way to incorporate her, that would be fun. You're like,
that would be fun.
So let's think about that and a little bit more of these days. What is it that you play with, or what is your creative outlet nowadays as an adult?
I am making an obscene amount of t-shirts and bags because I might be late to the game, but for Christmas this year, I got a Cricut and learned all about infusible inks. So don't be surprised if you have something here soon, because that's my new favorite toy to play with. And I have so many ideas and not enough money to get them all down.
That's why I have not. My sister-in-law has one, bless her, because I'll just text her like, hey, can you do this? So now I'll say, just kidding. Hey, Jess, can you do this? Because
Mine
those
broke.
are amazing. Yes, bro. This is what I had to deal with. This is why I have math anxiety. People like, no, I'm just kidding. I love you. So thinking beyond just the creative outlet, what is it that really sparks that light in you each day? Because education is a hard field, and there is real burnout right now. So what is it that you can't make t-shirts all day? Or, I mean, you could try, right? You try.
I could, but I probably wouldn't have a job at the end of the day.
Right. But what is it that you do to really keep that spark alive within the exhaustion?
Some days I do better than others, obviously, just like all of us. But I really think my why at the beginning of why I chose to go into the math field is still my why today. As you were talking about this stereotype of math kind of being like, oh, math.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I was oblivious to it when I was younger, but I don't remember it being so prominent when I was younger. Nowadays, it's acceptable. We've all heard, you wouldn't tell anyone you couldn't read, but it's completely socially acceptable to be like, I'm just not good at math, or I don't have a math brain, or I don't have this or that. I didn't think probably as much I did well in school, but I got a lot of things wrong just because I thought of things differently. And as I get older, I realize it's okay to think of things differently. It's not that you don't have a math brain or you don't have a ELA brain. It's just that it's how you do things, and it's okay to do them differently. It's not about the process. It's not about the answer. It's about how you get there.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because that is truly the foundation of where I believe that we have got to go through this surge of unlearning. We have to unlearn everything we thought we had to do. We thought we had to get there from this path. We thought that kids had to go this pipeline to prove success. But when you are that divergent thinker, when you are able to find other ways, when you are my son who's like, I just knew it, it can be a challenge in a system that is so process and outcome oriented. So help bring an understanding. The big buzzword within math is Common Core math. But could you shine a little light for people on what that all means?
Common Core is just a label. Whether you want to call it Common Core, whether you want to call it new math, I hear all kinds of random, some derogatory terms of what to call it. It really, I don't know how to describe it, to be honest with you, other than it's a label. It is different. There's probably so much controversy around it. And I'm just talking in terms of math. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in any, or even an expert in math, but in any area as far as that's concerned. Common Core as a label, and that's how we'll probably use it through this podcast, was just a different way of looking at the math. Typically when we grew up, the people, and I'm not saying all, I'm never using absolutes, but the majority of your students that when I went to school that were good at math were really just great memorizers. They could memorize their times tables. They, those things that other students struggled with. It's hard to reach upper level math. Yeah.
I was one of those. I struggled
memorized.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and myself as a what I would say was a decent math person, I also struggled. I probably had a good understanding of it, but even though I got the right answer on stuff growing up, I didn't do it the way the teacher wanted me to do it. So I missed half my credit because I was supposed to do it like this, and this. And there was only one way to do things, and that was the way you did it. So Common Core is more about, let's get away from that memorization and let's go towards understanding. I'm not going to say it's perfect. I do in general love what we label as Common Core math, but I will in no way, shape, or form ever tell you it's perfect. The other issue with that label, and that's really what it is, it's just a label. You can call it whatever you want. A lot of maybe textbook companies or teachers will say, this is Common Core math. No one regulates that. You can put, this is Common Core math on anything, I feel like. I'm sure to an extent, I'm not going to get into the legalities of that. But just because someone says it's Common Core, unless that's verified, that's part of what gives the Common Core math part a bad name.
Yeah, I definitely think that it has been given a bad name because of misunderstandings. And again, it's a label. And so when we talk about Common Core, I am so glad that you are saying, just again and again, it is a label. It is not a philosophy. It is a title. But what's deeper in there, and I've made it clear, and in fact, before we even started recording, I came on with a Zoom background, I'll admit it, that said math is dumb, because I was that kid that would have severe anxiety. When you started the time test and the teacher would pace the room and it was silent, I shut down. And I am a very good problem solver. I am not by any means somebody that cannot take this task on, but it became something that created a fear in me that I didn't know the answer in time, therefore I was not good enough. And so as somebody that has made it known that math was not my strength, I have had to retrain my brain to say, I can do math, I just have to look at it a different way, or I can do it with a little deeper work. It's kind of like how you and I are with writing. Yeah, I love writing, I love words. And so many times just be like, hey, words, get over here. Check this out.
I like bullet points and very direct, but it's funny that you mentioned the time test. I had the same anxiety with time test. I could do the math, but I'm not quick. I was always one of the last ones done with your test. I knew it, but I processed it a little bit differently, which took a little bit more time. So those time tests gave me the exact same anxiety that they gave you.
Yeah. And I think what I love, and here I go, I'm going to make a bold statement. I love about what is being labeled as a overarching title is Common Core. What I do love about that is that it is forcing us to pull back on that rote memorization and start digging deeper into the processes. And so something I've even had to help my husband is ridiculously good at math. Like he's a numbers guy, but even there are times that we're working through middle school math with my son. And I'm like, well, hold on. He doesn't have to do it this way. We're learning multiple strategies, and Common Core has really brought to light that idea of thinking differently and allowing students to learn. What I get frustrated with is when I see grading on proficiency within a strategy. So if it's a final test and a child is using a strategy that works for them, that's great as long as the outcome is there. But within their different lessons, to me, it's really allowing exploration of how to approach an answer.
I think that's the parent piece that needs improved upon. And maybe even some of the understanding of teachers. I don't feel like the rollout of Common Core, it was just kind of like, here's the standards. There was no explanation on an individual basis so that teachers understood why this was being done.
Yeah.
And that's not to the fault of the teachers. That's not to the fault of the parents. I even understand why people are like, oh, this new math or Common Core math is stupid and it's dumb. And why would you do this instead of this? Part of it's because people call it Common Core math when that's not what it is.
Right.
And part of it's just a misunderstanding or that it's different from what they learned. Adults are no different than children. Change. Most people do not deal well with change. If it's something different, it's always like, why would you do that when you could just do this? This is so much more simple. But it's like once you learn an algorithm in math, you can't unlearn it. And an algorithm is more of a memorized step-by-step process. If you don't have understanding of why it works before you learn the algorithm, it's near impossible to go back. I'll see problems that parents will post on like Facebook, like Common Core math, this is dumb. Why would you ever do it this way? Well, you can't take that out of context. They're learning multiple strategies. And because people don't like change, once you've taught a student one strategy, you have to force them to use the second strategy and become just as familiar with it. Or the third strategy, depending on what you're teaching. And then once they're equally comfortable with those strategies, then they're educated enough to choose their own. So there are times you have to force a strategy that doesn't seem like, well, I already know how to do it. Why would I learn another way? But it's giving you more tools. Math builds on itself. As you get into higher levels, there are going to be certain times where one thing is better than the other. Just easier, I guess, for understanding.
Momentary pause.
I just spilled water all over the floor. My hands get going and I get all excited. So the other thing is, regather, regroup. The other thing is, you'll learn a strategy using very small, simple numbers where it may not make sense to use that strategy, but they have to get comfortable with numbers they know and are familiar with, so that when they're using bigger numbers or different situations that they're not as comfortable with, it's not the process, or it's not I guess the process would be the right word. It's not the process. They're just trying to figure out the situation. I know I can't think of an example right now because I'm drawing a blank. I'm totally thrown off right now, Katie. I'm sorry.
No. Hey, spills happen. Don't worry. I think so. I'm going to take it from my experience, and I want to clarify that you have worked in a variety of schools, variety of roles. You've been an education consultant. You've been doing this for some time. So this is something you're seeing all over the place. And I know that as a language arts, and my background has definitely been more so in the writing and reading world, we were often challenged with the math department to say, okay, feel this, experience this, and go through it. And one of the things that I was always fascinated with was the, even at the elementary level, where we would be given a problem and the problem would be incomplete, and we had to define the variables within it. And so it was forcing us not to find the outcome, but to figure out what is the scenario, what could be happening. Now, my brain would always go to, okay, this is like a Mad Lib. So I have to figure out what makes logical sense here. Mad Libs don't make logical sense. So bear with me on that. But it started to become a different type of challenge. And so the more I would experience that, the more I understood that I'm not always worried about that outcome. I'm worried at looking at what's relevant information, what is not relevant, and then that vertical alignment. That is where so many families and so many schools have missed the mark with communicating that the vertical piece. Elementaries should be communicating with middle schools. Middle schools should be communicating with high and backwards as well, because it builds upon itself. So could you speak a little bit more to that vertical alignment piece? And then if you can think about an example that might be relevant, whether it's starting at higher levels and working backwards, walk us through what that may be.
As far as vertical alignment, in most schools, the largest issue with vertical alignment is a teacher is an expert in their grade level. Mm-hmm. I feel like it becomes a bigger issue in the elementary. If you're a high school math teacher, I mean, you've had a lot more math training. There's very specific classes that you have to take. You are forced, for the most part, to have a deep understanding of math. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard when you're teaching first, second, third grade math to realize how big of an impact that has as it goes up. The school I'm at currently, they meet once a week they're really doing a great job of this. They're sitting down and they're going through the curriculums to really understand what certain spans look like all the way up and why they're important. We'll even talk about individual strategies that we want to continue to use, when it's best to begin that strategy and how it can be used all the way up. So we're not looking at standards. I guess it is looking at standards, but it's more looking at how that strategy is used vertically, as opposed to what that standard looks like and how it flows and builds upon itself.
Yeah, it's building blocks. And before anybody gets upset from the elementary world, I was an elementary teacher. My background, I taught.
Sorry, I did not mean to offend anybody.
No.
Well, let me just say this so I don't. Yeah. I was a high school math teacher before I became a coach. And the hardest thing I ever had to do was write a kindergarten lesson plan where they were like, come up with 5 ways to count to 5. And I'm like, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We all have our area of expertise, and you can ask any high school teacher. We have our understanding, and we could never do what you guys do. So I'm not judging anybody. I think lower grade, they're saints.
And I think that's what we need. I think the power of stepping into the consulting role was being able to have conversations with more people outside of my happy elementary world. And it was hard because even if we would have vertical conversations, it stopped at 5th grade. And we weren't seeing that bigger piece. Now, we had an amazing, amazing team. I will shout out my Woodlawn crew all day long because we built that community where we wanted to learn and build and we wanted to grow. And so they would work hard to look beyond. But I also was a generalist. I taught all content areas. And traditionally that was in 3rd grade. That's where I spent most of my years. I did go to kindergarten. I took 3 months maternity leave that year because I was wiped out. So I'll just put it out there. But there are people in each grade that just nail it. And it was hard when I knew I wanted to go deeper. I love writing. Writing was kind of like, unfortunately, how science and social studies get in elementary school. They were not able to be really capitalized and built in. We had to do a lot of cross-curricular activity, which was rewarding, but it does get lost sometimes with math not being an expertise for myself. I went on to get reading certificates and pieces. So I think there's value in acknowledging what we know and what we don't know. And for me, I had to become more generally knowledged and worked more in the social emotional practice versus you or somebody else who specialized in social studies or specialized, etc. So I think the value in going out and meeting at other schools or talking, having multi-district PD, when we did that, that was so powerful because teachers got to see that the problems they were having were actually very similar. Same thing in business. What business people are feeling, schools are feeling. So how have you connected with other schools or professionals to help yourself become more aware of the needs?
So my first job as a coach was really an ideal placement. We were in a large urban public school district, and there were maybe like 12 math coaches that were going from all grade levels out into probably 50 different school buildings. But every other Friday, we came back and met for a half day. That was the best experience. And that allowed me to build my network.
Yeah.
The good part about today is we have social media everywhere. I don't have time for what I would call, PD that you can get credit for, but Twitter is a great place to professionally develop yourself. People will put it all out there. You'll hear all perspectives. It's just a great place to learn and keep up with what's going on or what other schools are doing. The school I'm currently in is K-12, all in one building. There's no one else that teaches what you teach. So making those connections via social media is huge to keep yourself growing.
I think, you're spot on that there are so many opportunities for learning and training. It's inspiring yourself to dig into it, though. And I think that's a roadblock I'm seeing in the students that I'm teaching that are going into the education field, but are really struggling with that ownership of it. And I think that as educators, there's an important reflection as well to say, I've been trained, but I also need to untrain this mindset that it has to be this way and start approaching learning in new ways. The business partnerships is a big thing I'm very passionate about, that schools need to look at new pathways. The state has now acknowledged that students might go a career track. What are we doing to educate ourselves to become more aware? If you aren't taking intentional time to go visit other classrooms or taking intentional time to learn about new ideas and new philosophies. And I'll be honest, sometimes I think Twitter is horribly toxic and showboaty. And so for me, there are times I disconnect from there and I go start digging into what I think is important for my core group. And teachers should feel empowered to do that. Don't worry about what your followers are saying. Worry about what that pod of students is saying.
Yeah, you have to do what works for you.
Yeah.
So do I agree that Twitter can be toxic? Absolutely. But when I'm going into different classrooms with different populations, different personalities, every situation is different. Where even if it seems toxic, Twitter helps me is I can see all those different perspectives and views, whether I agree with them or not. And that helps me make better decisions on what or how I approach working with that teacher or that group of students. So though it's not all great and fancy and fairy tales, it's social media, you do have to just filter through, but it can help you prepare for specific situations.
Oh yeah. And the people that you can connect with on there that share their thoughts and share opportunities, I agree with that 100%. I want teachers to take more ownership for doing what's authentic to them and their purpose and their classroom, and not what's trending within their educational circle. Because sometimes what's trending in that circle is not what the population of students in your school or your community need. I think teachers want to be engaged and they are 100% committed to their field, but they're burned out. And sometimes it's powerful to mute people that are also burned out, because that's going to make you feel worse. I've had to do it. And that's what I see is some people constantly liking others that are like, this is exhausting. Nobody respects us. Well, take time away from those and start empowering, like where Jess is finding the meaningful content. Go that direction. And it's okay. We're all wiped out.
I mean, we are all wiped out. For non-educators, when's the last time you tried to get in front of a group of 30 people and teach / entertain, because that's what it is, entertain them for an hour? And now I always think with the high school lens, but it might even be, it's just as difficult, if not more, in elementary, because you have the same group all day. But I'm teaching 7 classes a day or 6 classes a day, and I have 45 minutes to plan. When I do PDs, it takes me way over 45 minutes to plan for that and get ready for that. So teacher, a lot of it's over the PD, and continuing to develop yourself is hard because of the exhaustion piece.
Yeah.
Teachers work so many more hours.
Oh my
it's
gosh,
that, oh, you get summers off. You know, every teacher is like, but I put in 80-hour work weeks. If you're doing it right. Unfortunately, I know work smarter, not harder. You physically can't get things done in the time constraints that you have without giving up a large part of your personal life.
Yeah, and that is what burned me, and why I may sound like a bitter, angry former teacher, but I'm frustrated for my fellow educators that they're going through this. And I did not agree with a lot of what was happening, and I had to find a way to change the narrative. And so, do I seem a bit disruptive at times? Yes, because I think the system needs disrupted. And if I am able to be that person and speak out to where some people aren't helping the change, then that's why I left the field. And I want to be able to share voices like yourself and to share the needs of teachers and break down that wall, because with all the assessment requirements, the data requirements, with all this thing, the burdens that people aren't aware of, it's become a very siloed field. I know principals that have very truthfully disagreed with the mandates that they've had to do with regard to testing or data collection or funding, but their hands are tied and they have to move forward at this stake, the kids. It's about the kids. And so not misunderstanding that they're doing their job for a lack of support for the staff.
That goes back to time. We can't do this. I don't have time to explain all the laws or this or mandates that come through of why I can't do this. Yeah. So they just say, I can't do that. My hands are tied. It's not that principals or teachers don't want to understand or have time to explain. A lot of times, just higher ups are making decisions, and you can only, on a day-to-day basis, you can only focus on what's in your control. Right? Do we want to change the system? Absolutely. But that's one more task, and you can't focus on that every day when you're just trying to make it through the day. And that, I mean, that can be said for educators, business, that really goes worldwide, no matter what you're teaching or what occupation you have. That's just today, the world we live in today.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people don't think people want to know. That was a realization I had, that, and a piece I love about consulting and coaching was being that bridge between the leadership and all the staff, and being able to build that awareness. Like, sometimes principals would say, I didn't think they even cared to know. And meanwhile, staff is like, well, we don't need to know all the details, but we'd like to know why we have to do this or why the funds are this way. And it opens a dialogue. So I think creating an environment where, even if it's that meeting, I agree with you, when we would have those weekly meetings, that was the most powerful time, because it was not always structured to a T. We had systems and ideas in place of what we knew we would talk about, but it allowed us to explore why. and explore, like, why are principals feeling this way? Why are districts going this route versus that route? And so where do you think you see opportunity for teachers and administrators to buy back that time, or how can they get creative to find opportunities to have conversations?
If I had that answer, I would be traveling around, going on
Jess, I was
tour.
counting
People
on
would be
you.
paying big dollars to hear me speak. A lot of what teachers do is not teaching. And that's the biggest time consumer during the day. To me, the thing that would help the most would be community. A community that's involved, a community that everyone's on the same page, and understanding of always be skeptical, but you have to also be open to hear other people. Behaviors become a huge part of that, but I feel like a lot of that would go away just with community understanding.
Yeah.
Getting everyone on the same page. Yes, I know you're not happy about what's happening in this classroom right now, but that's also a lack of understanding. Some of it we can tell the parents, some of it we can't legally.
Yeah.
Parents being more involved or less involved. It's a balance. It really is a balance.
It's intentionality. It's why are we not communicating with parents? Why are we not having community conversations? Or what are the parents coming to us about? And if it's a common issue, what are we doing about it? So I agree. Community is internal as much as external. Yes. Yeah, I think this is something that, like you said, if you could find the answer, it would solve problems in schools and banks and library, like everywhere. They would be so grateful to have that. So I wish we had an easy answer, but in the meantime, I think we both know the work is being done by really quality, incredible people. I hate seeing so many educators burned out and fried, but I've been there. I know it. And I think that what you said at the very beginning of this is exactly what every educator needs to do. You talked about why you got into education, why you went into math at the very beginning. And so excuse me, I know that sometimes it feels so trite to hear people say, what's your why? What's your why? But truly, if you don't know why you show up every day, you will be eaten alive. And it's so easy to get consumed in data. It's testing season right now, but the kids, we can't let them slip behind, and showing up for them is why we need you all.
Well, that goes back to the understanding of why does the administrator do this or why do they not do that? It's really just an understanding.
Yeah.
Yourself and others. And we need to do a better job, I guess, of making sure people understand without it taking over our lives.
Yeah. Clear, consistent conversations, open and transparent, not conversations where I'm going to come to you and tell you this is what it is. I think huge, oh my gosh, one of the best things I've seen in some work I'm doing with a different local district is they had never really surveyed the students to see what their interests are. They've had their track of classes. They've had their pathways for graduation, and it's been fairly traditional. Your common or your general courses, you have your AP courses, you have the career tech program. But what they didn't do was ask the students, what are you interested in? And how does that align with the tracks we actually have set up? It was a beautiful moment when they could see the discrepancies between what they had and where students were going. And it explained why things were dropping off at certain grade levels, what opportunities they are to build. So I think it's also huge to capitalize on that student voice every bit as much as the adult voice. So yeah, community
is everybody. Community is all stakeholders involved.
Yes, I love that. So I certainly could keep talking to you about all of this forever, but I do want to think as people create new ways to come up with community and find their purpose in their happy little classroom and, find opportunities for learning, what is something that you wish people could unlearn when it comes to math or education?
Just one.
Okay, maybe top three if you want. No, I feel
it's just thinking about it from different angles. The biggest one is just to stop with it's okay to be bad at math, or you're a bad, you just don't have a math brain. Just quit saying it. A lot of adults do not realize that they're making it, by saying that about themselves, they're making it okay. And that cycle is not going to stop until that's not okay. Now, do you have to love math? No. It can be your least favorite subject, but you can't say that I can't do it, or I don't have the right brain to learn math. It doesn't have to be everyone's favorite. I know we're not winning that contest anytime soon, but it can't be okay to just say, I can't do it.
Yeah. Or it's not okay to tell your students or your kids that, well, you don't have to learn it that way, because what mindset are we setting up for them in the workforce? That's something I want parents to be aware of. What language are we using? And how is that translating into other moments in life where they find something hard or challenging?
Yeah,
so
because I've heard plenty of teachers, non-math teachers, also say, well, I just can't do math. You can. I bet you use it every other day. That's why you're a surviving adult. Do you do complex equations and things like that? No. But you use math and you use it proficiently every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the teachers
stop saying those things.
Yes. And I think the value of teachers like yourself and the ones that really are passionate about math and want to break that mindset are doing an incredible job of helping overlap what math concepts are being learned and application in life, making sure that they are connecting the dots, giving that why. Why am I learning this? That was always the thing. Why do I have to know algebra? I want to play with puppies forever. Like, totally.
Well, the same could be said. I had to write a biography, I swear, every year in school. Do you think I've written a single one since I've been out of school? No. But do I see the value in having done that? Absolutely. Yeah. Those skills transfer.
Yeah.
You're not going to use that exact skill, but it gives you a broadened perspective and an understanding to be able to do other things. We could say that about any subject.
Yeah. And it makes you appreciate and respect the people a little bit differently once you have that perspective. That is what the world needs in so many ways right now, is people to be willing to hear different perspectives and understand that there's a reason for that. I can't tell somebody that this is the right way when they are from another country where they don't even understand why we do some things that we do. It makes no sense to that. So perspective is everything. And I just get all warm and fuzzy at that word. And thank you for casually throwing it out there. Yay.
So casual.
So cash. Thank you. Well, before we go, I want to obviously say thank you, but want to make sure we celebrate everything about you. And there's so many things that I could say, because even though what's funny is how many years, we've known each other for while now, several years, but we didn't actually, as crazy as it seems, we didn't really become like two peas in a weird pod until quarantine times. And it was in that need to distance that we were like, wait, I need connection. And so I appreciate that you've always been the person that I can message and be like, this makes no sense. And yet we can laugh and cry and solve problems in a matter of 5 minutes. So thank you for sharing your fabulousness.
No, that's the truth. Thankful. The one thing I'm thankful for in the pandemic is it did force us to take a step back and realize what you truly need to make it through. And most of ours was probably humor.
Yes, because how else do you survive? We've kept it together.
Exactly.
Though. I'm very proud of us.
I finally met someone with as weird of a sense of humor as myself.
Beautiful. And how else would we survive but weird humor and memes, right?
Exactly.
How you start the day. And people won't understand. People will question. People will wonder if you even are capable of, taking things on. And yet I think that the power in connection is that when you feel that connection with somebody, you can take on obstacles you never would have otherwise anticipated, which is why, again, teachers that are out there building those relationships with students, you're going to change the world because kids lean into learning when they know somebody cares. And so I celebrate that about you because you made me feel like what I was feeling and seeing and questioning was valid. So thank you for being that person and while challenging me at times. So we need that too, where you're like, wait, what do you mean? So aside from all that, what is something else that we should know about Jess Magee?
I don't know. I mean, I have 2 kids, an awesome husband. I don't know if this is like something everyone would want to know, but I want to know that it's normalized. Like a lot of times I feel like I have no clue in the world what I'm doing, and that's okay. No one ever told me that. I felt like a fraud probably like my first 10 years of what I would say in the real world. Like I'm pretending to be an adult, but I really don't think I'm an adult. That's normal and that's okay. Yeah. And here I am at 40 and still feel the same way.
Yeah.
And that's what forces you to grow. And that's okay. Yeah. I don't know if that's anything great about me, but like, I feel that's my biggest feeling on a regular basis is like, am I a fraud?
But I love that because not that you're a fraud. No, I'm just kidding. No, I love your transparency on that because I'm not sure that there is a person I haven't met, whether they are retired, whether they've been a top executive for a global company or my kids who hasn't said, I don't know what I'm doing and I am not sure when I'll figure it out. Now, yes, we go through periods of life where we do get it and we're like, oh, this feels right. But we also aren't learning and growing. We aren't being our natural educator selves. We aren't constantly questioning, well, wait, what else? What's more? And so thank you for that. I think you are a shining light and you helped my spark come out. So thank you for being my Olin Mills pose. That's a throwback to my language arts team. Love you all. I will make sure to share, LinkedIn's probably best, isn't it? People can track you down. Twitter, you're a Twitter. Yes.
I seriously have water and ice all over the floor in here. Like, what is that? Not a Jessica move right there? Like, if that was going to happen, it happened to me.
She's saying, so follow her to the school she's supporting with paper towels so she can clean her mess and then use the paper towel roll for a project later. That's my friend, and I love you forever.
Find Katie and then look at, we're connected somehow. That'll be perfect.
It's perfect. And you can see when we launch the Lakes and Libations podcast, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Tiny homes and houseboats. That's what we're going to do.
I have to share one fast story because we agreed that we needed to get together and my husband was having his 40th birthday party. And you're like, yes, we'll come over. Except the fun fact is my family had yet to meet Jess's family. And only right before you told your husband that it was a surprise party, which he was like, that is going to be an epic fail. And we're like, this is going to be fantastic. And it did go off perfectly. But that's the type of ridiculous people we are, because why not have a surprise party for my husband when he's not met any of the people surprising him?
It's an extra surprise.
Ta-da! But thank you, Jess.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Okay, so maybe now you've gotten a glimpse into why I adore Jessica so much, because not only does she bring an amazing perspective, but she keeps it real. She is a relatable person that helps bring light to otherwise challenging realities in education. As I have mentioned before, I was one of the educators that reached their burnout point. And truth be told, even while I was in the classroom, I knew that that was not going to be my permanent career. There were years, and shoot, there are still moments these days that I would beat myself up and feel like I was an educational failure. I left students, families, and schools that I absolutely loved. Now, thankfully, many of them are still part of my life today. But in my heart, I knew I was doing a disservice by just forcing myself to stay because I had tenure or because I knew I had a great retirement coming. I had to make a change because I was going home depleted. I had lost my spark, and despite that outside appearance that I maintained, it was all for the sake of my students. My passions in education were always around embracing curiosity through that authentic guided exploration or experiential learning and field trips, and especially the social emotional piece, that connection and growth. So when I realized that I had reached a point, I became so far removed from not only what I love, but what I'm really highly skilled at and trained in. I knew I had to make a change. Now, do I still teach? Absolutely, every day. That's part of who I am. It's part of why I am a speaker and what I write about. But now I speak about the importance of embracing that spark, understanding your purpose, and allowing yourself permission to lean into the things that matter most while also walking away when things aren't right. To the educators out there, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. To those like Jess, my sister-in-law Laura, my cousin Sarah, and so many friends that are teaching and showing up for your students throughout that chaos and what may feel like constant judgment and ridicule, know that you are making a positive difference. The jeers always will seem louder than the cheers. But I am proud to know you, and you are all showing up each and every day to make sure that the kids have what they need to be lifelong learners, willing to ask questions and empowered to seek answers. Again, I say thank you. Be well, stay curious, and I'll see you real soon.
Did you know the largest snowflakes that ever fell on Earth were 15 inches in diameter?
Later, Tater.